Okay.
Okay, so the overall purpose of this web app, this is by a university professor who has invented this more advanced way of testing water. So
Mm.
I'm not sure what all is special about his method, other than I do believe that it's the number of things that it tests for, as well as like the degree of accuracy that his test produces. So it actually tests for 50 different um, minerals or pollutants. Yeah, so the concept of this is basically he would be taking he tests the water, and this machine that tests the water will export a CSV sheet or CSV data, and then we're going to upload that into the app, and then the app would send the customer that requested the water samples or the water tests. It would send them an email to let them know their test results are in. They come back, log into a portal, and then now they can view the report. So the majority of the functionality of this thing and the design of this thing is going to be in the actual report itself. So where we have the three different parts of the report structure. So the first part of the report structure is a data table. But this data table, we want it to be, aesthetically pleasing, visually distinct as far as like, um, the different data points are going to come back in different colors based upon the threshold of the results, as well as there's going to be tool tips to explain what each element or pollutant is. Um, and there's actually one thing I should mention is that there's two types of customers that he has. So there's like two variations of this report. It's pretty minor, the variations, but essentially, like in this data table here, the two ones are environmental or economic, are the two purposes of the test or reasons for the test. So when it's environmental, we're looking for things that are, beyond a healthy level where they're bad for you, right? So it would basically, red if it's it's a problem, orange if it's in the questionable range, and green if it's okay. So all the numbers in the data table would be like that. Now there is 50 elements, but we're probably going to divide those into 5 or 6 categories. So it'd actually be 5 data tables essentially. Now I say data table because most of these are going to come in like multiple samples. So when a customer, they're not going to send one water sample in, they're going to send 5 or 10 or 15. If they're, say, buying a house and they want to test the water, they don't want to just test it from one location. They want to test it from each faucet so that they know if there's, problems with the pipes or the faucet or so forth that could be adding the pollutants in here. So that's where it comes in as a data table, because more than likely there's going to be several rows of multiple samples.
Okay.
So that's part one of the report. Part two of the report is the graphs. And so we're going to be using this whisker graph with scatter plots. And so I'm not 100% exactly how we use this, but I think the idea is wherever the majority of the data lands, like when we look at a graph like this, it'll be like one category. So we're looking at maybe 5 or 10 water samples in that one category. And wherever the majority of the data lies, that's like the box. The outer extremities are the whiskers. And then we're using the scatter plot to compare that with 3 different standards of thresholds of where we think the safe threshold is. One is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. The other one is the European Union standards, which has a little bit different set of standards. And then the third set of standards are the set of standards that he came up with as a scientist, which he says is according to the scientific literature, which is not always the same as what these two agencies are recommending. So he wants some type of toggle where we could display those scatter plots differently, whether we're looking at the EPA, his recommendations, or the EU standards.
Okay, so the thing is, we can toggle between the different standards, right?
Right.
And we can see
But
where the current item which has been examined stands.
right.
Okay.
Right.
So
Now, the
for
one thing that just came up to me that's not clear is I did assume this is a downloadable PDF report, but they can only have it one way. They can't have the dynamic graph in the PDF. So perhaps when you download it, you choose you want to
yeah,
compare, which threshold dots, because we are limited in these scatter plots. That he chose to go the graph library. To customize the graph would have been more expensive, so we have to adapt this to make sure that it complies with the graph library.
okay.
Okay. And then the third part of this is going to be called the ID cards, where he would have each element or pollutant that we're testing for would have a card. It would have a picture of the element. It has some information about the element and, the different threshold levels for each background measurement, as well as the testing accuracy of, his testing mechanisms. So, and yeah. So really, when he's testing for a customer, we're going to determine if those set of tests are for economic or for environmental then. And that's going to be the two variations of displaying this. So the more that I'm thinking about this, the less likely I think that this is an exportable PDF report. This is a report that they have to log into the portal to see. Because I think we want it to remain dynamic.
Okay,
And
so
potentially
when there's a picture of element, so what is this element?
an element could be iron or chlorine, or so they're just going to have a picture. Yeah, there. He defines the pictures, I would assume. We can have some test ones that we use in the design.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's really it. We are also doing his logo. So right now we're trying to get the information back so we can do the mood boards for the logo. But in the meantime, to prepare for our kickoff meeting, it would be nice if we did the wireframes for some of this. Now, like I said, most of the work is in there. If you scroll over, we've documented the user flow in here. So it kind of shows like what back end screens are needed to do this. So it kind of shows like, yeah, the admin, this is how they administer a test. Then we would imagine that, he goes into the application and clicks, new report. And then for that new report, see, because a customer could have multiple orders, multiple reports, right? Start typing in their email address. It would suggest that if it's already an existing customer, so it would populate their customer data. If the email is not recognized, then we're going to have to put in their information, first name, last name. I don't know how much information he's collecting on this. Then yeah, he just uploads the CSV and he's done. Go ahead.
I'm saying I understand this part.
Okay, very good. Very good. Do you have any questions? Good.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Can we get one sample CSV file?
We can try, but all you're going to see is 50 data points is what you're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, one example of a real data would be helpful for us. Like when we have to create the screens, maybe if we can get one realistic data, that will be helpful for us.
Yeah, and the only problem with that may be, I understand what you're going at there, because some of these may be a whole number, some of them may be 0.00, and then the other thing on that would be measurement units. But I don't think the CSV is going to provide the measurement units. It's just going to be raw data. So I think we'll try to get a sample CSV, so just so that we understand what a row of that data might look like.
Right.
But we're probably going to have to get all the measurement units and stuff from him.
Okay. Yeah, right. Also, the second thing I wanted to know is um, uh, the way you, when you explain the data table, the first place, the first thing, I did not get the clear idea of it.
Okay. The idea is it's not just a normal data table that we put in the back end. This data table would have tooltips where you mouse over and you know hover over a tooltip and you get more information about that element. Yeah, the numbers in the data fields are going to change based upon if they pass a threshold, right? So
Mhm.
and that's, you know, we have 3 thresholds that he's defining in here. So somewhere we're going to have to pick what is the default threshold to use for it to change colors. But essentially, if it's below the threshold where we consider it safe, the number is going to be green. If it's into a questionable zone, it will be orange. And then if it's in the danger warning zone, then it'll be red.
Right.
So
Can you explain
this,
uh, the first point, like 50 elements separated into 5 to 6 categories? Uh, what kind of elements can these be?
sure,
Like,
like one category will be heavy metals. And it'll have iron and gold and silver and, you know,
hmm,
different heavy metals that could be found in water.
okay,
So and then yeah, so he's just going to categorize those 50 elements so that they're in groups of about 10 or so.
okay. So when we examine one sample of water, we get uh, so many elements which is present in the water, and we
Mhm.
categorize all those elements. Say there are 50 elements, so we categorize those 50 elements under 5 to 6 categories, and we um, uh, create this report um, stating how much of element A is present in this water, and if it is in a danger zone or if it is in a safe zone, etc. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's correct. I just want to clarify one thing is we will show the results for all 50 elements, whether it's found or not, even if it's at a
Okay,
0. So that template will display the same way.
okay, got it. Okay.
Any more questions?
Not right now. Let give me a second. Let me go through the flow once.
Mhm.
Okay. So can you follow me on the file? Yes. So at this point, the last point, when the client can view or download the report, this is where we demonstrate. I mean, to display all those reports, right?
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
elements and six
But
categories.
I would I would imagine that a report can have multiple samples and an order can have multiple reports. So there's like got to be some grouping mechanism so that if a client logs into their portal, really the only thing they're seeing is their history of orders and reports there.
Okay.
And as far
So
as download, if we do download, it would have to have a mechanism for you to choose which threshold, because otherwise those thresholds are dynamic in this report. So whether you can not down whether or not you can download it or not is definitely questionable at this point.
okay. Okay, got it. Can you explain this thing that one report can have multiple report?
Water
Sorry,
samples?
yeah,
Yeah.
I want
In
to
fact,
have a
most reports will have multiple water samples within them, and that's how the data table is going to have multiple rows. Um, because most will have 5 or 10 rows for each category, and those represent the um, the different water samples.
That means when somebody sends water samples, they send multiple water samples for testing.
Right, right. And in fact, one thing I don't know is what happens when someone only sends one water sample in. I mean, what does that do to the graph? We can't do the whisker graph anymore. So is that just two scatter plots? One is your data, the other is the thresholds. That part we're gonna have to clarify with the client.
Okay.
Yeah, we might need like 2 different graphs.
Well, how I figure it is we could use the scatter plots that are already built into this graph to map the data differently if there's only 1 or 2. Maybe even 3, I don't know, except it'd start getting messy at 3. Or line and scatter, but really we only bid the job to implement one graph. So that might be a little bit of an issue. I'll follow up with the client on that.
Okay. Also, we should keep a way for admin to view the reports as well, right?
Yes, correct. So we just put admin and super admin, with the only difference of super admin can manage the admins, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
all of them could be able to view all customers and the history of that customer's orders, as well as just being able to view all reports and bring up an individual report.
Okay, right. I would like to clarify the hierarchy of orders and reports once again. So one person can place multiple orders. While placing one order, one person can send multiple water samples. So while creating a report for one order, my report will contain all the reports for all the water samples separately.
Okay, wait. Yeah, I think a little bit of clarification on the naming convention for this hierarchy. So we have a customer. The customer can have multiple orders. An
Right.
order should be able to have multiple reports. So if I create an order, let's say I'm a real estate agent and I have 5 houses that I want to test and send in. So I actually want 5 reports, one for each of those. And at each house, I'm going to be sending, 5 to 8 samples in. So overall, even though I wanted 5 reports, I'm sending 25, 30 samples in, right?
Right.
And then each report is for each location. So the hierarchy would be customer, order, report, and then samples. And you could have one to many each way.
Got it. Okay, got it. Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. All right. Very good. So of course, for anything that we're messing around with for the report and the back end, we're just entirely wireframe because like I said, we're going to do the logo. So as soon as we have the information to get those mood boards started, we'll get that started as well then.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
I'll get this recording sent over to you, Andrew, when it processes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye guys.